a few. Slideshow, play from start. Okay, and I think we're on the air, so I think we can go.
All right, thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay, so no, my name is Steve Symmetric. I'm a builder from Southern Rhode Island, and I presented last month. I built the first passive house in Rhode Island. I want to say a couple words about what we're getting into here tonight. I'm going to say that I've always, as a builder, I've always felt like if you build it, they will come. And that's how I've always felt. I feel like that about passive house, about high performance building. And I found out over the last few years that it is kind of naive to think that. But just for the record, all good builders are naive. So. And the little story about, I brought this up at the last month's meeting with my own passive house project. Our construction costs were set by a real estate appraiser who knew nothing about high performance building, who then gave those numbers to a bank who didn't care about anything except the appraisal report that aligned with their underwriter's idea of what they wanted to fund. And that's what set our construction budget for that house. And from that, I've learned that there is a lot more to the process of building these houses. And right now, the market seems to be limited to kind of custom homes, kind of more boutique one-off projects. But the real goal here in the long term is to bring what we're trying to do as designers, builders, and contractors to a larger audience. And what I've really learned is that we need to bring in more people to the table if we're going to bring these projects out to a larger audience. And the people at that table, which is a group effort, is going to require real estate agents, appraisers, and bankers. And so I do know for a fact from learning about Craig and other real estate agents in my market that I've started talking to, and also my own passive house customer who is a commercial real estate appraiser who brought all of his knowledge that he has to the table to get his project off the ground, and he failed as a professional in the field. But the reality is there are people out there at that level that are trying to do the work. And as naive as I am, I do believe that they're out there, and Craig's going to teach us about that. So.
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah. Yeah, two commercial appraisers, Brad and Jordan, both are commercial appraisers, and still had lots of challenges in terms of trying to get valuation for that project in a way that could support the project, which is a big problem in the real estate industry. There's no two ways about it. I'm very fortunate that I'm involved in a lot of projects at the National Association of Realtors, which, probably many of you think accurately is a very conservative organization. It's true. Their focus is really on property rights, and they've done a fantastic job since their inception in 1913, protecting property rights for homeowners. That's their primary agenda. So sometimes when we talk about, home energy labeling, it begins to set the spine a little bit of the National Association of Realtors or Massachusetts Association of Realtors gets their hair up a little bit. I'm lucky enough with a group of people that are involved in the process nationally. The leading appraiser in the United States in terms of green appraisal, high performance home, and commercial appraisals is a woman named Sandy Adamatis in Florida. There's a woman named Laura Stukel in Chicago at Elevate Energy. A guy named John Roshert in Austin, Texas. Myself, John Shipman in California. There's a group of us that are really working hard, and we have a voice now at National Association of Realtors to deal with some of the issues that Stephen was talking about. Valuation is a big, big issue, and believe it or not, National Association of Realtors are really getting on board and starting to support this process of best practices for valuation for these kinds of projects. And I'm very lucky to be involved in some of some of those projects, as well as some consulting work that's helping to support the marketplace through the multiple listing service. I do a lot of work educating realtors in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Rhode Island on high-performance homes. I teach the green designation. So Again, I feel very fortunate that I have made these connections and kind of am working this as well as working as a full-time realtor. My wife's not so thrilled about the fact that I'm doing all three of these things at the same time, but she's very supportive, fortunately. We've got two kids. One's about to finish her senior year in college, and the other one's about to enter college. So we're past that phase that Steven's in, where you've got the 5 to 12-year-olds and he can't be out at night.
Craig, are you taking questions that you?
Absolutely. You can shoot questions throughout this whole thing. Yep.
So why are real estate agents opposed to energy labeling?
Yeah, that's a great question, and or I've got a slide on this a little bit later, so we'll hit it again. But why? I call it green fear in general from the real estate community. Why is that? My business card is green. I'm NAR green designated. The green thing does have some fear in our community.
And the source of that fear,
Yeah.
you're getting to it.
Yeah, exactly right. So the source of that is a couple of things. One is, as I think we all know, Green's affiliated with one side of the political aisle, and let's face it, Republicans buy houses too, and their houses are usually more expensive than the ones that Democrats buy, So there's a fear in the industry that if you, there's a fear in the industry if you start to label yourself that way, that you potentially, even in Massachusetts, cut yourself off to a population. Now I think that's, ridiculous on some level, but that is a fear of what's going on. With home energy labeling or energy asset ratings for homes, the fear is that could stigmatize properties that are low performing. I think that's absurd too. One of the functions that I serve on at NAR is the Land Use, Property Rights, and Environment Committee, and we talk about this issue quite a bit in the committee meetings. We meet once in DC every year, and then at the annual convention, which this next year will be in Orlando. And when we talk about, even National Association of Realtors has a very specific focus about what stigmatized properties are. Stigmatized properties usually are, there was an axe murderer that killed 10 people in the basement. That's a stigmatized property. Or there was a meth lab in there. Or there's a ghost. Believe it or not, that's an actual definition by NAR of a stigmatized property, that it has a ghost in the attic. What isn't appropriate for us talking about, upgrading an existing home with some high-performance features or air sealing and insulation, we don't call a home that needs a new roof stigmatized. It's just a home inspection issue that we've got to deal with, right? And that's the issue that we're really trying to rework how we talk about these issues at National Association of Realtors, certainly. So those are a couple of the fears that are out there. I think, it's new. And that's something that puts a lot of fear in a fairly conservative organization. Nobody likes change. My grandmother was born in 1910. She passed away 101 years later in 2011. She remembers and you think about the change that she saw in her life. It's mind-blowing. She remembers the Red Sox winning the World Series in 1918. She doesn't remember it, but she knows that women got the right to vote in 1920, which is amazing to me. In my grandmother's lifetime, women got the right to vote. She saw the Great Depression come and go, Prohibition come and go, world wars, a Catholic president, civil rights, not only airline travel, but men landing on the moon, the internet. She saw the Red Sox win the World Series 2 more times in 2004, 2007, which is amazing that her life spanned that. A black president she saw. Now, the only thing she valued out of that whole list was the Red Sox winning the World Series. There's no one that was more fearful of change than my grandmother. But the fact of the matter is, even she knew that it happens. It's part of the deal. And NAR, to their and not only National Association of Realtors, but there's a lot going on at the upper levels of the real estate trade organizations, including the Appraisal Institute, AI, the Appraisal Practices Board, the APB, to support market transformation towards homes that are more energy efficient and healthier to live in. And you'd be surprised at how much is going on, because when it trickles down to the ground level, at the appraisal level that Brad and Jordan and Steve and Steve were dealing with to try to get that valuation correct, or dealing with kind of the average realtor that is kind of intimidated by the fact that selling a high performance home isn't just selling granite countertops anymore. A lot of this is invisible for them and for their clients. A lot of it's behind the walls. So it freaks them out a little bit to deal with that kind of product, to deal with this changing product. A lot of real reasons that are out there why this is out there, and I really think that a big part of the solution, I know a big part of the solution, is education. And that's something that I'm very committed to, and you'll see that as we work our way through this. But there is a lot of support at the upper levels of the real estate trade organizations to get this right. And I really, that's out of fear as well, because the fear is that they'll get left behind if they don't start to get on board, because we all know we're crossing a threshold now where we have challenges in the environment, in the way that we use energy, and we have to step to the plate to deal with them. So I know that that's a driver for NAR. We just got, at our mid-year conference in May, we just got budgeted through the board of directors a director of sustainability at NAR. Never has happened before. I'm on a working group of 14 people to rewrite the climate policy that was written in 2008. That doesn't even include the word resilience in it. So we clearly need to rewrite that. But these things are actually happening at this very conservative institution known as the National Association of Realtors. So there's a lot of reasons to be hopeful to get this right, because it's all happening up here, and it's slowly starting to trickle down to the average practitioner. And that's what we'll talk about when we get to the end of this presentation today, kind of the best practices that, again, I'm involved in this really cool working group of people to create best practices for high performance home valuation or high performance building valuation. And we'll talk about what those are as we work our way through this. Well, now I've covered about 20 of my slides. I don't know what I'm going to talk about now. So, the title of this is kind of a provocative title, Selling High Performance Home in an Indifferent Marketplace. But really, when we talk about an indifferent marketplace, who is indifferent in the marketplace? Well, consumers certainly don't appear to be indifferent. That map on the left, as you look at it, was produced by Elevate Energy, October 2013. So that's an old map of 2.5 million homes in the United States with some level of green certification, whether it's LEED, Energy Star for Homes, National Green Building Standard. Back then, I don't know if there was a passive house on the map yet, but that map is moving, certainly. And then in Massachusetts, that second map is from Mass Clean Energy Center. That's an old map as well. That was the end of last year. That's the 38,000 homes in Massachusetts with solar PV on them right now. When we talk about, and I think that's a driver, even though all of us in this room know that energy efficiency comes first, air sealing, insulation, let's get that down first before we put solar PV up on a property. But for the real estate community, there's no question that solar PV is something that's really got them waking up to all of this stuff, including energy efficiency. And why is that? Because again, the EE upgrades that we do are invisible to them. They could get away with not knowing about it. But now if you're a realtor and you're walking up to a house with your buyer and it's got solar PV on the roof, they're going to be asking questions about it. And there's a valuation process. We'll talk about what that is as we work our way through the last part of the presentation to deal with that. So solar PV has really helped to get me more real estate education work. because it's become such a hot issue in the Massachusetts real estate community right now from an educational perspective. The product is not indifferent, certainly. I mean, Steve and, Fred, you guys aren't indifferent about the product that you're producing. You're very passionate about the product that you're producing, as well you should be. There's no indifference about if you're committed to building a passive house or a passive community or a LEED Platinum project, you're not indifferent about that project. And the market's not indifferent about it as well. I mean, Google bought Nest for over $3 billion a couple years ago. They don't just make, silly little frilly choices about the products that they're buying. They're really investing in the smart home marketplace and what that means. And Nest, again, because it was so sexy. I mean, who's got a Nest in their house? I do, Yeah, 3. I love my Nest because my son comes home from high school, he turns up the heat, and I get to turn it right back down again to piss him off. That's a lot of fun for me. I don't know why, but I enjoy that quite a bit. But, that's a very sexy look. Again, that got a lot of people's focus in the real estate community. So there's the product is certainly not indifferent and growing. And as I said, the upper levels of the real estate trade organizations also are not indifferent. There's a lot of fear of being left behind. That little flow chart was from the MLS the MLS Green Implementation Guide, which was released by the NAR Green Resource Council. I'm on the advisory board, and I did some of the work on that. That was released in May 2014. 2014, 2015 were big years at NAR, at the Appraisal Institute, at the Appraisal Practices Board to really start to get this stuff right. And now, fortunately, we're really seeing momentum at the trade organizations. When we're the team of us that are involved in this process are all speaking at all of the trade organization events and getting a lot of people in the door wanting to learn what's going on. So again, there's a lot of reason to believe that things are moving in the right direction. So where is the indifference? And I think as Steve pointed out earlier in the introduction, he got it exactly right. It's really at the ground troop level. That's where the indifference is. This is my slide for green fear. But there's fear of this new type of product. Oh my God, this means something else I have to learn. This means more continuing ed units. I don't want to think about this stuff. The real estate transaction is already really complicated. And it got a lot more complicated with Dodd-Frank being passed. So when you start to add this new product to the marketplace, I mean, Dodd-Frank was passed for all the right reasons, but it's still complicated an already complicated real estate transaction. We think of, if I work with you as a seller or a buyer, which I hope to. I have my card available if you need it, by the way. I'm happy to talk to you about that. But if I work with you, we start with a handshake. That's point A on the alphabet. And hopefully we get to Z. When do you think Z is? Yeah, that's a good guess. I'd put that at Y. Z is when I get my check, actually, which is after the closing. That's the point that I want to get to. And every real estate agent will tell you that you can get to G and the thing breaks down and you never get your Z. You can get to M. You can get to P. When the feces hit the fan in 2008, 2009, 2010, we were at the closing. This never happened to me, fortunately, but I know realtors that were at the closing table moving forward with the transaction that they thought the bank didn't fund because the bank went out of business that morning. So incredibly complex transaction. And now we want to add something like, an energy asset rating that the buyer sees mandated at, by the time they sign an offer. No effing way is the reaction to that, because we've got a very complicated transaction. Now, my feeling about that is very different. I think we have consumer protection involved, and this is the wave that we're moving forward on. But that is part of the fear as well. And this is the way many realtors kind of conceive of this. I'm going to show you some quotes from MLS PIN, Property Information Network, the predominant MLS in Massachusetts. And there's some real pet peeves that I'm going to show you in here. But the Urban Dictionary defines quote unquote as a horribly incorrect way of adding emphasis to a questionable term. So take a look at what's in the quote unquote there. That's the questionable term from many real estate agents in Massachusetts. These are pulled from remarks from listings in MLS PIN, okay? This next one has two of my pet peeves. Not only is green in quote unquote, but the entire thing is in all capital letters, which drives me crazy. I hate to see that in remarks. This LEED certified green home. Is there any reason to put green in that to start that sentence? No, it's just a LEED certified home. We don't have to put green and quote unquote in there, you know? And this one's particularly great because, as you all know, there's no such thing as an eco-friendly certification for a property. So you can see how much distance there is between the product that all of us care about in this room and how we market that product, or the knowledge and competence that is clearly not there for these real estate agents when they're attempting to market this kind of product. But at the same time, this is from MLS PIN as well. I kind of pulled the numbers of when energy efficiency, by doing keyword searches, any energy efficient is used by Massachusetts realtors in property by year. And you can see that real estate agents are realizing that energy efficiency is a selling point. Particularly, you know, when we get to 2014, 2015, we saw those big winter price spikes by what was then NSTAR and National Grid of 26 and 31%. Those were drivers in the marketplace. People were realizing that lower operating costs for homes and cost certainty for homes really did make a difference in the buying decisions. And buyers were speaking with their wallets with that. So realtors are starting to get on board. In terms of what's going on with consumers, there's so many studies and reports out there and polling that is supporting the fact that consumers are really getting it. This is one of my favorites. This is from the Demand Institute, a nonpartisan polling nonprofit that looks at differences in consumer demand. And one of the things that they studied was how consumer demand is changing in the housing market. This was fascinating. This is one of my favorite frames because it always throws real estate agents for a loop. They're appalled by this. What they did was they looked at something like 54 different items that all of these 10,000 people were polled on. And they asked them what you have in your home already and what you most want. And they called the difference between what they had and they most want a satisfaction gap in the marketplace. That's what the Demand Institute called it. And the highest factor, the biggest gap, was in energy efficiency, which blows real estate agents away when you say that that was larger than updated kitchens, increase in storage space, safe neighborhoods. It was energy efficiency. Consumer demand is changing, definitely, and real estate agents are starting to feel that and trying to figure out, in kind of a panicked way, how do I deal with that? But many people don't like change, like my grandmother. My office is in Somerville, so I see this kind of system all the time. The coal-fired coal furnace that was converted to oil and then covered with the asbestos snowmen, and it's still sitting there in the office. That I'm guessing that these jugs down here are probably from Prohibition when this was installed, and it still is still there. I'm sure you guys know these numbers. I hear different numbers depending on the source, but the EIA says the average home in Massachusetts uses 109 million BTUs of energy every year. DOER was using 130 million in their pilot program in Springfield when they were putting together their MPG numbers for home energy assessments. It's a lot of energy. And as you know, we're the most energy efficient state according to ACEEE in the nation for the last 5 years. And still, our homes use 109 million BTUs of energy every year for heating, lighting, cooling, all of our gadgets and appliances. And so for real estate agents, I try to make that number a little bit more clear because they don't know an BTU from a hole in the ground. And what I use as a reference point is the first time we released a nuclear weapon in warfare was over the Japanese city of Hiroshima, August 6, 1945. The bomb detonated about 1,000 feet over the city, and it released 60 billion BTUs of energy in a split second. And obviously, that was a game changer in how we think about the world. It only takes 550 homes in Massachusetts 1 year to consume the same amount of energy that was released by that first atomic weapon. If you multiply that by 365, it takes 200,000 homes 1 day just in Massachusetts. It takes that amount of time to consume the same amount of energy that was released by that atomic weapon. We have 1.75 million homes in Massachusetts, so in less than 3 hours every day, 365, 24/7, just our homes in Massachusetts are consuming the same amount of energy that was released by that first atomic weapon. And whether or not, and I'm sure all of us understand what climate disruption is all about, we all are believers in climate change, but I deal with realtors that don't get that. And my point to them is, even if you don't buy that argument, the fact that our homes are consuming the same amount of energy means that there's risk to all of our communities out there. In every way we produce energy, even solar PV on rooftops, involves risk. Now, we know that there are ways of producing energy that are much more risky. Coal-fired power plants attribute to something like 13,000 premature deaths a year in the United States, over 1 million workdays lost. That's big for our economy. That has a real impact on our economy. But every way we produce energy involves risk, and I think that's useful for the real estate community to understand that all of our communities are at risk just with the sheer demand of power that we pull from the grid. Transportation gets a lot of focus in the media for solutions about our carbon footprints, but the average home in Massachusetts uses 2.5 times more energy than the average car does in Massachusetts. And if you own a Prius, it's worth 5 Priuses. The buildings that we live and work with, in Massachusetts consume 50% of our total energy. Nationally, it's a little under that. It's 39%. In Massachusetts, it's 50% of our total energy consumption. So my message when I'm talking to realtors is that we have a huge, huge opportunity to be part of a solution if we can start to think about this more thoughtfully. And that's the message that we've been sending to NAR, to the upper levels of NAR, and they're listening. They're getting it. They're realizing we have an opportunity to participate here in a thoughtful way. And so how do we get these troops on board? Well, first of all, this isn't, energy efficiency isn't a new concept. This has been around for a long time. And, we've got to think about this as a war, I think, on some level, to get people on board and to get them to deal with some of the problems that we face in terms of how we're using energy and what we're doing to the environment. Education is critical to get the ground level troops on board with this. It is absolutely critical. Massachusetts DOER hired me 3 years ago because they were having a real problem, as many energy efficiency groups have tried to do. They've tried to reach out to the community and to the real estate community. And most realtors, when they hear, somebody from Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnerships or DOER or VEIC up in Vermont, if they come and start talking to realtors, their eyes roll back into the back of their heads very quickly, because energy efficiency people just don't understand the real estate transaction. We think of all of you as civilians, to be quite frank, in the process of actually marketing and moving a property through the complete stages that it needs to get to a closing for us to get our paycheck. So one of the things that DOER decided to do, they had heard my name, and I'm a Massachusetts licensed real estate educator as well. There was no course on the books in Massachusetts for CEUs, continuing ed units, for Massachusetts real estate agents. So we built a course that passed through the Massachusetts Real Estate Board in July 2014. That course I teach all over the states at our 13 different local real estate boards that are under the Massachusetts Association of Realtors umbrella. And we've taught that course now to well over 1,000 agents in the state out of 17,000 active agents. So, DOER's connection point, to start to spread this word through a real estate agent that kind of gets this message is proven to be effective. One of the things that I also work on is I'm on the advisory board for the NAR Green Resource Council, which is the administrator for the green designation through the National Association of Realtors. We decided in 2014 that we needed to rewrite that course, because when the course was originally written in 2008, it was all about new construction. That was the focus of the quote-unquote green marketplace. And what we decided was that we really needed to involve existing homes, because we all know that that's the elephant in the room, particularly when it comes to an energy suck in our communities. We needed to involve existing homes in the designation. So we completely rewrote the course through 2015. We released day one at the annual convention in Chicago, in San Diego, to a lot of applause. And now the new course, the NAR Green Designation, is up and running. I've taught it several times in Massachusetts. We have new NAR Green Designated agents. And that's kind of, that's 2 6-hour courses with tests at the end. It's kind of an intro to how to market these homes correctly, and an intro in understanding what the building science is. But I would encourage all of you, if you want to make a change in the marketplace, we have at the NAR, we have a code of ethics for National Association of Realtors, and Article 11 says that we need to be knowledgeable and competent in the homes that we help buyers buy and the homes that we help sellers sell. I think all of us understand, and by the time we get through the green designation courses, all of the realtors understand that selling a high-performance home is very different than selling a home that has granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. It's a very different product. And I think Article 11 is really important. It's something that we're trying to push at NAR. If knowing what I know about high-performance homes and the risk that's involved without an agent that's knowledgeable and competent in marketing those homes, I would never, if I were a broker owner, allow agents to list a LEED certified home or a Passive House certified home or a house certified through National Green Building Standard if they didn't at least have the NAR Green designation. And what I would encourage all of you as consumers is to really bring NAR Green designated agents into any transaction that you're thinking about. We want to support that group of individuals that have gone through that process of understanding how to market these homes efficiently. So if there's one takeaway that you walk away from today, think about, when you hire an agent to sell your home, even if it's not a high-performance home, think about the NAR Green Designated Agent first, so we can support the efforts that we're doing to make sure that they're knowledgeable and competent in that product. This is the old, one of the fields that's in our multiple listing service, the predominant multiple listing service in Massachusetts, which is MLS PIN, Property Information Network. MLS, a multiple listing service. Hi, glad you could join us. Did you bring me anything?
Sorry.
No, you did not. Not very good. There are 700 MLSs in the United States. Multiple listing service is not one entity. It's not one single behemoth. It's 700 different organizations spread throughout the United States. And all of them have different data fields in them. So one of the things that we've been working in, we're trying to standardize those fields because we all know that big data is what it's all about these days. And there's an organization that was formed 5 years ago called the Real Estate Standards Organization. They produce something called a data dictionary every year. They're releasing version 1.5 right now. And the goal is that by January 1st, 2018, all of the MLSs across the United States are using the same standardized set of green data fields throughout the United States. And one of the things that we did with one of the consulting projects I'm working on right now with Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory is to incorporate solar PV data fields in this next version of version 1.5. This was the old one of the green data fields in MLS PIN back in 2013 when I found some interesting information. So the way that this worked in PIN was autopop was unspecified for green certified. And unless the listing agent, when they were typing in, 123 Main Street, they were putting in a new listing into MLS, and let's say it was, had a LEED Platinum certified. Unless they moved that box from unspecified to yes, they never saw this drop-down menu. That drop-down menu only popped in when they moved the box to yes. So one of the things that I discovered, I was working with a buyer from what was, the largest home energy assessment company in the region, which is now defunct. One of their VP level people, he had just had a child and wanted to buy a home. And so I knew that Travis was certainly interested in the type of product that we all care about. So he was sitting in the office with me, and I'm like, I'm with Travis, and I'm saying, Travis, check this out. I'm putting your search criteria in here. We're hitting yes for your search criteria. I know you want to see all of these, but I know that there's going to be 12 condos in your price range that just popped on the market that were LEED Gold certified in one of the towns that you want to be in. Check this out. Boom. I hit the enter key. They didn't pop up. I'm like, so what's going on with this? I had written a study on the high-performance home market the year before, and I was thinking about how I was going to approach a new study on what's going on in the marketplace, and this became the thing that I really focused on. What I realized was that what that listing broker did, never moving the box from unspecified to yes, never realizing that there was a drop-down menu here that they could use to check that there was a LEED certified property, was not uncommon. For every one home in Massachusetts that sold in 2013 that had some kind of a green certification, for every one that was correctly listed, 1.5 were not. For every one condo that sold in 2013 that had a green certification, 2 were not. For every new construction condo that sold in 2013 in Massachusetts, so a condo that was built in 2012, 2013, but sold in 2013, for every one that was correctly listed, 3.5 were not. That's a big problem. We have appraisers complaining about, well, I can't find comps. For that poor builder that got these 12 condos LEED Gold certified, and because their listing broker never knew that there was a checkbox for that in the multiple listing service, if I didn't know that those condos were there, Travis never would have seen those. You know, that the developer that went through, let's face it, LEED is a big pain in the ass, right? I mean, to get that certification. And for that guy to go through that process and not match that for the buyers that are looking for those properties, that's just that's a sin in the real estate world as far as I'm concerned. And for geeks, you know, like us that are actually studying these things too, appraisers, you know, buyers, it's a big problem. So that's one of the things that we've been trying to deal with. Now,
Hey, a question on that?
yep.
Why isn't there a box for HERS rating?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. So now, what the box looks like does include the HERS index score. So there's nobody in this room that was involved in this, but I work with the U.S. Green Building Council, with the Residential Green Building Committee, been an advocate with them for a long time. We've got a really great group there. And one of the projects that we took on in 2013 was to update the green data fields in MLS PIN. And so we submitted 20 changes to the CEO and president, this woman named Kathy Condon, who's a real thought leader and really caring about getting the green data fields correct. You know, she's terrific. And she pushed that through to her staff. They're an unusual MLS because they actually maintain their own database. They're one of only 3 MLSs nationwide. Most of them have a third-party provider like CoreLogic that maintains their database. So they were particularly they were unusual, but they were very receptive to this idea. So we submitted 20 changes to them. They implemented 16 of them. So this box appeared in MLS PIN in January, and the HERS index score got added in April of 2015. So when I went back and looked at all of the homes, just the single-family homes that had included a HERS index score, again, dealing with this issue of knowledge and competence and how much we need to do to get this right in the real estate community, what I found was a little alarming in terms of how the HERS index score was being used. There were 400 properties from April 2015 to December that the listing agent put in a HERS index score. 15% of those 400, so it was 60, indicated that the HERS index score was 0. Yeah, yes, that's exactly my reaction too. So I pulled all 60 of those listings. I looked through them, looked through all of the pictures. One of them had solar PV on them that I could find in the pictures. So I knew that this was a problem. You know, it's part of the issue that we're dealing with. It was really 6 realtors that were using 0 as the HERS index score in all of their listings. That was the problem. So now I'm not the MLS PIN green police, but you know, that because they don't know, or you know, sometimes when we have tax data and we don't have accurate information in there, we'll put in 0 as our default. So it could be because of that. But there, you know, we have to get this stuff right. We've still got big challenges in front of us. Steve?
Craig, I don't know if you know what percentage of MLS in the country have this as an option?
Yeah.
And how do we find out if our local MLS offers this?
Well, our local MLS does. I mean,
Well,
I know
Rhode
that
Island
for sure.
Does Rhode
But
Island offer that?
they're so I'm involved with Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnerships on. We submitted a bunch of recommendations for the Rhode Island MLS to implement some improvements to their green data fields. So that is in the process of happening, definitely. But I can give you more information about what's going on in Rhode Island, what's going on in Connecticut. NARIN, which is the New Hampshire and Vermont MLS, has really moved forward on a lot of these fields. So again, there's a lot of work in the upper levels of the real estate trade organization to think about this stuff and realize we can't be left behind with a lot of these things. But we still have a long ways to go in terms of the average real estate agent understanding how to, you know what these fields are, what they mean, and how to accurately deal with them. You know, one of the things that in the NAR green designation we really wanted to address to the real estate agents that we were training is, you know, you need to know the science, but for most consumers, we need to be selling the benefits, right? Because unless they're geeks like you, and you walk into one of my listings that's, LEED Platinum certified, I'm happy to talk to any engineer about all of the building science that was included in this, and that's a great discussion for me. But let's face it, that's one of 20 people that are walking into the house that just want to see the house, So what we really concentrate on is making sure that real estate agents know how to sell the benefits, not the science. So what's the benefits of energy efficiency? Well, particularly in this marketplace, it's lower operating costs for a home. Total cost of ownership is affected with lower operating costs. That's a really great discussion that I've included, early on in the process when I'm working with buyers is let's think about the total cost of ownership. Something we really want to encourage realtors across the board to take a look at. Lower operating costs really do make a difference. There was a study produced by IMT, the Institute for Market Transformation, University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. This was a study that encompassed 71,000 home buyers from 2007 to 2012. In the real estate community, we mark that time as the time when the feces hit the fan. That was a bad time in the real estate industry. And they looked at 71,000 homes. Some of which bought Energy Star certified new construction homes, and some of which bought new construction homes that didn't have an Energy Star certification. They found that over that period of time, the homeowner that bought the Energy Star certified home was 32% less likely to default on their mortgage than the new homeowner that didn't buy the Energy Star certified home. So total cost of ownership makes a difference, particularly in down markets, and that includes transportation costs as well. But the other thing, we're in a very volatile marketplace when it comes to energy and electricity in particular. I'm sure you remember in 2014 when NSTAR and National Grid raised those rates by 26 and 31% when we got to the winter, and the shock that we all felt with that, that's painful to suddenly. How do you budget when your electricity rates rise by 30%? And that was that was nothing compared to the commercial and industrial rates that went up at the same time. They went up 80%. So I know a housing authority that has $100,000 a month electricity bills. Now, luckily, they were locked into a long-term agreement with a competitive supplier, so they didn't feel this. But you can imagine if a housing authority suddenly their monthly bills jumped from $100,000 to $180,000 a month for a 6-month period. That's jobs that's lost because the services need to still be there. There's a lot of volatility in our marketplace. So I think one of the things that's really critical about energy efficiency is not only does it lower operating costs, but it helps you control that volatility in the marketplace, which I think is a real driver here in the Northeast. We all know this, that, inevitably, if I'm sitting down with a new buyer, they're buying their first home, they've probably been renting in Alston and Brighton in a 3-family where, we all know what a split incentive is. The landlord has no incentive to get in there and do any kind of energy efficiency upgrades. The home's uncomfortable, it's drafty, some rooms it's really cold, some are really hot. We all know what this is all about, and we know that the high-performance home, the LEED certified home, the Passive House certified home, the National Green Building certified home, it creates a healthy, comfortable living environment. Lower environmental impact is certainly a driver in the marketplace now more than ever. We're getting more and more people aware, that their personal choices really do impact the environment. And when we can sit down with them and talk about the difference between, again, the main driver of this in the media seems to be transportation, but when we can have an intelligent conversation about how much impact your home has on the environment and on the power grid, it really is an eye opener for buyers out there. There's no question that when Steve or when Fred are building a home, they are building the best product in the marketplace. No question about it, right? We know that as an absolute. We don't buy rotary dial telephones anymore, right? When we go to the iPhone 4 and get whatever the latest version of the Android or the iPhone is, right? We don't buy, cars that were built in 1990. We buy the new product that's in the marketplace. And one way that we can talk intelligently to buyers about the kind of product that we all care about is that there's no question that from a building science perspective, this is the best product the market can offer out there. And that has value in the marketplace. And this is something, Fred, I hope you don't mind that I deal with you specifically with this, but Fred gave me an incredible tour of the project that he's doing at the distillery about a month ago now. And one of the things that I realized in that tour with Fred is, Fred's vision for this product isn't just about building a comfortable, safe, energy efficient condo and set of condos. Fred's vision for the distillery is a community. And it's a brilliant vision. There's a theater that will be there. There's art studios. There's a greenhouse that's going to be part of this. There's cafes. The whole focus of this is not about selling a product. It's not about selling something that's tangible. It's about selling a community, a way of living, a way of thinking, and that's really started to reshape some of the things that I'm thinking about. I've got a project right now that Carter Scott and Jonathan Cantor are starting to break ground on a 4-unit condo project in the Fort Hill area of Boston, and that really the tour that you gave me, Fred, really helped to put that into a very clear perspective that this isn't just about selling a home. It's about selling a way of interacting with the rest of your neighbors in the neighborhood, which I'm going to hit a little bit more specifically. We, and feel free to throw in questions any time, but you can tell I love to hear my own voice. So, yeah.
Question for
Yes,
you.
sir. Yeah. What's your name?
David.
David, I'm Craig. Nice to meet you.
As far as the NRA, hold on a second. NRA.
Don't say
All
NR.
conservative groups.
National Association of Realtors.
As far as the NAR's approach, it seems like their approach to marketing, well, the message that they're going to put forward is through educating the realtors first and then having educated realtors be the people that are conduits to the marketplace, or are they going to be marketing directly to the marketplace as well?
Well, the National Association of Realtors they do larger ad campaigns, definitely. And at some point, we will see funding for high performance homes as part of a marketing campaign. That's something this group of us that are involved with NAR are trying to push for. We were just happy right now that we got a formal position for a sustainability director at NAR on this last year's budget.
Step one.
That was a big step.
Right.
Yeah. But so NAR's, I'm not sure NAR really has a focus. It's kind of the voice of the group of us that are trying to push things forward. I clearly believe what I can do here in Massachusetts and in the New England region is make sure real estate agents are aware of this product and how to market it correctly, and how to enter it into the multiple listing service correctly so that appraisers can appraise it correctly and we can create valuation.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm just trying to figure out as far as if there's an approach. I know it's going to come down to individual businesses. Overall, the marketplace needs to be improved.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And that's, for a real estate company, so I work with RE/MAX Leading Edge. It's obviously an affiliate of RE/MAX under the RE/MAX New England Integra umbrella. But RE/MAX Leading Edge is 10 offices in the greater Boston area with 200 agents. My title is Chief of Energy Solutions, so I make sure that our 200 agents are aware of some of these opportunities for them to be able to connect to their buyers and sellers with. That's a very unusual place. I'm the only person, I think, in the United States that has that kind of title for a real estate agency that is really forward-thinking. I'm very lucky that I work with 4 very forward-thinking broker owners that support that. All of the agents, all of those 200 agents, work for RE/MAX Leading Edge as independent contractors. You know, so really what we're talking about is connecting down to the real ground troop level of all of those individual contractors. And again, hopefully some of them, only half of 1% of all the 1.1 million realtors in the United States have the NAR green designation. So I can't say that often enough. When you go to buy and sell your next home, make sure you're using an NAR green designated agent, because we want that to have some market impact at NAR and to increase the group of people that have some level of knowledge and competence with this product. Yep.
Why don't you make that a mandated continuing education credit as part of the program?
I think that's a fantastic idea. I love that idea. That would put more money in my pocket, which I think is fantastic. Absolutely. But whenever you deal with anything that's mandated with the National Association of Realtors, for instance, when Senator Downing, I think it was Senate Bill 1764, if I remember correctly, David, he had a bill on the table that would have required, mandated, at the point of sale, a home energy assessment with some kind of energy asset rating that the homeowner, the potential home buyer would have seen when they were writing an offer on the property.
Which it should be.
Massachusetts Association of Realtors strongly objected to that, and that's because National Association of Realtors fears anything mandated in the marketplace is not healthy at the point of sale, partly because of all the reasons that we've already talked about. We've got a very complicated transaction already. So your point about the market pulling this on a voluntary basis and making this be part of the equation is the answer, and we're moving that forward, one step at a time. But as soon as you put the word mandated in there, know that MAR, National Association of Realtors, are immediately going to dig their heels in the ground against anything like that.
But you still have to get continuing education credits
Yep.
in
Yep.
practically every
Yes.
field and,
Yep.
and any kind
And
of
realtors do too. They have 12 hours every 2 years. Again, the course, the high performance home course, is very popular in the real estate community. I've worked with all of our local boards throughout the state, been back many times on Cape Cod and the Islands, Berkshire Association of Realtors, Central Mass Association of Realtors, and the NAR Green designation is getting play right now as well, which is really exciting.
Should that be included as part of the 40-hour course?
The
40-hour course that you have to take to get your realtor's license.
Should it be? Sure, I'll say yes. Of course it should be. Will it be? No, absolutely not. The 40-hour course has a very strict set of guidelines, and getting high-performance home features into that, we're not even talking about homes, believe it or not, when we're dealing with new realtors in that presentation. It's all about real estate law. Great question, though. So getting back to, some of the specifics of how lower operating costs and cost certainty does matter. We all know we live in New England, and everything we do here in New England is right. It's where everything good and true and right about the world started, right here in New England. We have the best we have the best educational institutions. We have the best healthcare institutions. We have Gronk, we have the Patriots. I mean, we are number one. But this is a chart where we don't want to be the leader of. And again, this is a jump in power prices from first half of 2013 from the first half of 2014. This doesn't even include that 26 and 31% rate hike at the end of 2014. There's a lot of pain felt by consumers out there with these escalating utility costs. This is information, and we've been doing this for nearly 10 years now. 2007, we started to do this set of polling for consumers from National Association of Realtors, and we're seeing this number be very consistent, that heating and cooling costs 86% of the time really do matter to consumers across the United States. This was an interesting poll that was done by the National Association of Home Builders. This was just released
a couple months ago, they did a consumer poll on the additional amount buyers would pay for a home to save $1,000 a year in utility costs. And my feeling is the smart ones are in the 70% down here that are willing to pay more for lowering their operating costs of their homes. Pretty impressive numbers. The first study that I did on the high-performance home market in Massachusetts was the 2012 marketplace. And I was looking for a number that said that could firmly say to our real estate agents that buyers were paying with their wallets for lower operating costs. And what we were hearing in 2012 was in all of our offices that buyers didn't want to buy homes that were heated with oil. And so I looked at the EIA numbers for the heating season of 2000. Their projections for the heating season of 2012-2013, so October through March. And they projected for the average Massachusetts homeowner, if they heated their home with oil, it was going to cost them $2,553 to heat that home that winter. Versus if they heated their home with natural gas, $1,007. So there was a $1,500 delta there between the projections between heating your home with oil versus heating your home with natural gas. So I looked at our 10 communities that we have offices in. We sold the entire marketplace. There were 4,600 homes that sold in 2012 in those 10 marketplaces. 2,500 of them were heated with natural gas. 2,100 were heated with oil. And I found a number that was surprising even to me. When I broke down the numbers, there was a price premium for homes heated with natural gas of $11 per square foot. That's a huge number. So for a 2,000 square foot home, a homeowner was willing to pay $22,000 more if that home was heated with natural gas versus oil in 2012. That said to me, and to the real estate agents at our firm that I get to present all of this information with, they were like, wow, that really makes a difference. Lower operating costs really do matter. Yep, Steve?
Who do you think was driving that pricing? Consumer demand? Or
Yeah, consumer demand. It was just consumers, talking with their wallets. It's real simple.
Were agents selling that?
What's that?
Were agents selling
No. The agents, all they were hearing was buyers don't want to buy a home heated with oil because it costs too much. That was what they were hearing. Then I decided to really do a rigorous analysis of it, and the numbers clearly said that was the case. I mean, that wasn't, real estate agents having the number already. There was an $11 per square foot premium. This was something I discovered after looking back at the 2012 data. Yep?
I think some of that, too, is a lot of the oil was imported versus natural gas was coming on and being domestically supplied.
There's no question about it. Yeah, I mean, the cheaper cost of natural gas, let's face it, was from the fracking boom. It got a lot cheaper. There's no question about it. That was a driver in the marketplace. This is a study that I really love. This was done by the T.C. Chan School of Public Health at Harvard University. They released this in September 2015. They looked at cognitive functionality in 3 sets of office spaces for 24 workers that they shifted from office space to office space. And they defined cognitive functionality as 8 different types of thinking. And they found something pretty remarkable. They compared the cognitive functionality of the workers in kind of your average office environment. They looked at what they called the green office environment, which what I took away from that was kind of an Energy Star certified product, office building. And then what they call the Green Plus office environment, which is a LEED certified office building with low or no VOCs in the carpets and the chairs and the paint that's used on the walls. And they found some pretty exciting numbers in terms of the cognitive functionality. Crisis response, 97% higher in green conditions, 131% higher in Green Plus. Strategic thinking, 183 and 288% higher. That's unbelievable numbers. Information usage, what we do every day,
172 and 299% higher in the Green Plus working conditions. I know that they're working now on the same kind of study for residential properties. My understanding is that they're anticipating that the numbers are going to be the same. I cannot friggin' wait for that study to be released for the work that I do in selling this kind of product. Because, I'm very fortunate. I've got a kid, in her last year at Georgetown, very, very smart kid. She was really on top of her game. But I know how competitive it is to get a kid into a good school these days. I know what these kids are competing with when they get out of college against a workplace that's not only in the United States, but it's worldwide. And think about, if those numbers are accurate, what every mom and dad will want to buy, to make sure that their kid has the advantage, because 90% of our time in the US is spent indoors, to have the advantage of higher cognitive functionality in their living space. Can't wait for that to be released. And then, people are definitely more than ever aware that they have a personal environmental impact that they need to really start to think about. I mean, thank God for the Pope, thinking about these things and being ahead of the game. And President Obama, of course, tackling some of these issues. This is the last house standing on Holland Island in Chesapeake Bay. You may know that the mid-Atlantic part of our country is kind of getting hit on two levels. Not only are we dealing with sea level rise, but that part of the country the land is also shrinking. So you're seeing, more and more evidence of climate change, very clear in the Chesapeake Bay area. Massachusetts is an interesting place because, the red is the way the map looked in the 1600s before we started to fill everything in the 1800s, 1850s, 1870s. Back Bay was actually a bay, right? South Bay was actually a bay back then. It wasn't land. And the dark joke at the BRA is the red map is not only the way Boston used to be, but potentially the way Boston's going to look, in 2050. They're planning for 2-foot sea level rise by 2050, which with an average storm surge says that we're going to have 40% of the city flooded if we don't do something to make our community more resilient. That is a driver even at National Association of Realtors. We pulled all of the work that's being done at all of the communities up and down the East Coast, the West Coast. We're looking at all of the local planning board work that's being done to deal with fire resiliency. When we were down at mid-year conference in early May, that was when the fire was happening at Fort McMurray in Alberta, Canada, which was triggered by 91-degree temperatures in northern Canada in the beginning of May. That fire that broke out. That was 24,000 buildings that were destroyed. A community of 88,000 people that had to be shipped out of that community in emergency circumstances. That community is never going to be the same. And in the United States, there are local planning boards looking at the best practices for fire resiliency, the best practices for tornado seasons that are starting earlier, ending later with more intense storms. That's something that every realtor at the National Association of Realtors is now starting to think about, and why we're rewriting the NAR climate change policy so we can be more active on this front. Definitely. One of the people that are working on the working group to rewrite the policy is a realtor from Louisiana, and they're losing a football field every 4 hours of land in Louisiana. It's incredible what's going on right now, and obviously our organization, if we don't step up and deal with some of these issues, stands to be probably one of the most affected industries out there. Obviously there's the Prius effect, and this is a driver in the marketplace as well. People are more and more aware of their own environmental impact. Another new data from National Association of Home Builders, people that are concerned the impact of your home on the environment, not concerned, concerned about environmentally friendly home but would not pay more, 68%. I'm just glad that 68% are concerned, and 14% are concerned and would pay more, and I'm happy to work with that market right there. The best product in the marketplace, people are willing to pay more for the best product in the marketplace. We pay more for our iPhones, for our iPads, for the best in breed, we're willing to pay more. And I would argue that the high performance home is the best product on the marketplace. I love to have that discussion. Nobody's satisfied with any good, very good anymore. We all want excellent. And so when I'm talking to my potential new customers, it's, there's going to be something that pops up in, realtors normally ask, what are you looking for in your new home? Well, I want granite countertops, I want more, I want more living space, whatever it is. Very few realtors ask what they didn't like about their last home, which is definitely part of my dialogue right now, because it always allows me to be able to work into this cycle at some point in that conversation, and all of these are connected together. And going back to what I learned from the tour of the distillery with Fred, when we're selling multifamily units, this is more than just selling a green building. It's really a relationship between the building, the community, and the homeowner that I'm really excited about in terms of how I begin to think and market this kind of stuff. Kind of some baseline level things here. Fred's graph includes a lot more than this, but kind of a baseline level. And how do you make this real to people? Well, this is the project that Carter and Jonathan are working on right now. It's a 4-unit condo association. It'll be LEED Platinum certified in Fort Hill. These will be Energy Plus homes. So the HERS ratings we project will be -1 to -56. They're beyond net zero. How does this relate to the community of people that will be living in those 4 condos? Certainly from a building perspective, when we talk about indoor air quality, well, LEED and low or no VOCs are part of that product and part of the scoring system. But for the community, what they care about is indoor air quality. And that cognitive functionality part of that is something that people can relate to and understand. From a building perspective, we all know what a HERS index score is, and that means lower operating costs. But really, from the consumer perspective, it moves them away from having to have this painful discussion once a month over their utility bills. The utility bill stress that's there. Lowering the environmental impact. Solar PV, EV, electric vehicles. We all know that can lower the carbon footprint, along with everything that we're doing with these ultra-tight building envelopes, with mechanical ventilation, and using very little to heat and cool these homes. And then our community. This development is going to be in a very hot area that now has a pattern of green development going on up there with the Urbanica development that happened a few years ago. And that's all being part of a good neighbor and a steward to the neighborhood, to the community. All of those things are really exciting to me in terms of how I think about how to market these larger projects and get the right involvement, the right buy-in. We got to match the right buyer for the community that's out there, and that buyer is more and more out there. The consumer is there. They're dying to hear this from somebody that can market this correctly, is what it comes down to. So let's talk about what's going on in a little bit more detail about the best practices for high performance home valuation. This is something that, Steve, you'll be happy to hear is actually happening with the Appraisal Institute, with the National Association of Realtors, with the Appraisal Practices Board, all being connected together. And Brad Havner is actually part of that dialogue. He's been terrific as well. This, as I mentioned before, was part of the Green MLS Implementation Guide, 86-page document, to give kind of a 3-tier level that was sent out to all the MLSs. At that point, there were 850 when this document was produced, to create a a three-tiered level of adopting green data fields in MLSs. That's been a very popular document, really took off. This is really exciting. This was just published. Steve, did you happen to copy any of these by any chance? All right, I'll fill you in on this. This is a document, and this one's really important, and I'm, again, very honored to have been part of this project. This is a document that's created by the National Association of Realtors and the NER Green Resource Council, BCAP, the Building Code Alliance Project, and the Appraisal Institute. This is something that's very, very important for taking charge of the appraisal process from a listing broker perspective. What you don't see here is on the back side of this, there's a letter that I can, I can do my own branding with my own logo with, and it requires the buyer that comes in to buy Carter's and Jonathan's property when we get these things to market. We make it a requirement in the offer phase of the product that they have to send this letter to the lender that says this is a high performance home product and we need a green certified appraiser for this project. We now have 6 green certified appraisers in Massachusetts. Last year at this time we had 0. So we are making progress with all of this stuff. And that is really a critical part of this, making sure that the valuation happens and that I, as their listing broker, can exert some control. We've never had control over that up until this point with this document that was produced. Yep.
The problem we had with that was you could do all of that, and Brad and Jordan went to 10 different banks.
Yep.
And you could have all the proper documentation, that all these systems are in place.
Yep.
They to the bank, and they just say, not interested.
Yeah, well that game is changing now too. Partly because of the issues that you guys ran into, But that the underwriters, we presented this to Carter and Jonathan's banks. We're using this product, and if we do this early in the implementation phase, people are realizing they get it. One of the problems with the URAR, which is the Uniform Residential Appraisal Report, that's the appraisal report every appraiser uses to appraise a property. There's one line item in it that says energy efficient items, completely meaningless. So the Appraisal Institute, this was back in 2013, created something called the AI Green Addendum. And that's a 5-page document for a passive house certified property or a home with solar PV on it or a LEED certified property that is a much more rigorous document. Now, what used to happen if I was listing a home that had a LEED certification is, we get it under agreement. The appraiser would call me and say, hey, Craig, I want to meet you Wednesday at 3 to take a look at the property. Sure, no problem. Hey, I just wanted to check, have you ever appraised a LEED gold property before? No, not really. Don't worry. I've got the AI Green Addendum all filled out for you by the developer. And there's a blank. You hear nothing on the other side of the phone. And if you're, do you know what the AI Green Addendum? No, I think I've heard of it. I don't really know. If you're uncomfortable with the assignment, don't worry about it. We have green designated appraisers now that we can use. So if you're uncomfortable, tell me right now and I'll go through the bank. This is the way I used to have to deal with the issue. By the time I got to meet this guy Wednesday at 3, I was the expert and I never had any issue with valuation. Using that addendum, moving it forward. Now it's a different marketplace than Rhode Island, or New Hampshire, which are, let's face it, they're probably 10 years behind what's going on.
And you go to get your loan, they actually send the appraiser to the property.
Right, and that's a different. Now we're talking about new construction versus me selling it as a resale or a new construction sale.
Actually,
So
as
slightly
a consumer,
different
you
process.
You can't bring in an expert to meet with the guy.
You can. That's a law.
Well, I use the opportunity to do it is it's tough to create that opportunity.
Yes, that's what we're trying to do right now, to create so that we use these documents appropriately. That's exactly what we're trying to do, to create a best practices so listing agents and developers, builders can control this process better than they've ever been able to do.
Construction, you'd have to get all this stuff done before you even go to the
Yep,
bank.
you have to project it. Absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely right. And now this document, again, fully endorsed by the Appraisal Institute, fully endorsed by the National Association of Realtors. Went through their legal departments. Everybody's good with it. You know, big. You know, this just was released this last month, actually.
Craig, 1 second. Is there any commercial green appraisers?
There is, yeah. There are commercial green appraisers in the state right now. I think there's 4 of them. Yeah. I'm going to just hit this quickly. What's going on in the multiple listing service and how a multiple listing service works. Some of the projects that we're involved with right now to deal with some of the problems that we've been facing with real estate agents. Nobody, I mean, I'm a real estate agent, right? You don't mind if I say the word fuck, right? That real estate agents fuck up. I mean, that's what it comes down to. You know, all the evidence that we've already talked about, you know, already supports that. So what is an MLS? Well, when a listing agent, when the person that has the contract with the seller goes back to the MLS, they take all kinds of pictures, they write down all kinds of information about the property. They open up their multiple listing service and they start to fill out all of these fields, green data fields, you know, normal data fields, and some of them are auto-populated from the tax records, which are collected by the Warren Group here in Massachusetts, right? So those are the inputs for the MLS. Occasionally there might be an API that an MLS is also connected with that might give data that gets auto-populated into the multiple listing service as well. But this is where it goes. This is what the MLS is. It's really the central brains of the real estate transaction. It's the central nervous system of the transaction. It goes everywhere. It's used every place. What you see on Zillow in Trulia is because Zillow and Trulia have an agreement with the multiple listing service to be able to pull that data that the listing agent entered into the process. That's why it's so important, particularly with this type of product, that we get this right, that we get the right data entered into the multiple listing service. 2 projects that I'm very excited, very honored to be working on right now. One is with Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, one of our 16 national laboratories, to auto-populate solar PV information into MLSs. We've got 2 target markets that we're working with right now. One of them is Massachusetts with MLS PIN, and the other one is Sandicor in San Diego. And we're creating a roadmap. This is DOE funded. We've got to deliver a roadmap to them at the end of the year about the process for, in these 2 very different MLSs, a way that auto-population could happen with solar PV information. So obviously, Mass Clean Energy Center, DOER is all involved with this. When I start putting 123 Main Street into the computer, if it's got solar PV on the rooftop, that some basic information would auto-populate. Information that we know if the average real estate agent is left on their own, they'll screw up. You know, is it leased or owned? What's the size of the system? You know, 5.3 kilowatt system. What's the estimated annual production? What was the year it was installed? Some baseline information that we know will get screwed up. That project is happening. Yep.
We're supposed to be out of here by 8.
Oh, okay. Jeez, I was worried about it. All right. I've got like a half an hour more, Steve. I mean, I don't know. Another really exciting project is, I don't know if you've heard about this, but Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnerships, NEEP, also has funding from the Department of Energy to create something called the HELIX, the Home Energy Labeling Index Exchange. So Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnerships would hold a database of DOE home energy scores, HERS ratings, LEED certified property, single families, condos that have certifications, Passive House, Energy Star, National Green Building Standard certified. They create a database that then MLSs from Maryland up to Maine could get through an API and be able to auto-populate that data into the multiple listing service. So some really exciting stuff going on to deal with some of the issues that we've been facing that I talked about earlier about misrepresentation, underrepresentation of really important data sources. This is the AI Green Addendum, the top line of it. This is a 5-page document. Absolutely essential that we get that used in the marketplace. More information about how, it's really important that we get this right, that we're able to convey that developers and homeowners that have made energy efficiency improvements, that have made investments in solar PV, that this really does have a reaction in the marketplace, that it creates more value, creates more equity at the point of sale. That will be the single biggest driver of people making change to their existing homes and moving this ball forward. There's some resources. There's a bunch of them in there, that I use all the time for valuation purposes. The PV value tool is critical. The ResNet National Registry I use all the time for looking at properties that my buyers are looking for. A lot of good resources there. So that's it. Thanks. There's a lot that's happening, and it's not all bad. We're trying to get it right. So.
So if anyone wants information from the PowerPoint, if you give me your email, Craig's off to share a PDF of the PowerPoint. So I'll hang out for emails. And I want to say thanks. That was phenomenal. I mean, it touched on everything that we were looking for.
Thank you.
We learned we needed to do.
Thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it. All right. Any beer left over there, Steve?
Was